Evening. Just going to give it a couple more minutes to let people make their way in, and then
My
we'll
voice on and
get things going.
yeah, what I'm saying is the voice this way.
Okay, let's get started. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for joining. This is very exciting. We definitely appreciate everyone making time for this. And before I get into the exciting stuff, I thought I'd take a quick moment to explain who we are and what we do at Grant Engine. At Grant Engine, we're focused on supporting companies in navigating the complexities of the federal landscape and easing the pathway to contract. Whether it's a DoD contract, an NIH grant, or any other federal R&D award vehicle, we help businesses find, win, and manage awards across the federal landscape. Founded by our CEO, Sam Tetlow, Grant Engine was created to save through helping innovators usher in new solutions across the commercial and federal markets. Grant Engine is in its
Zev, it looks like you got muted.
Sorry about that. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know what happened there, but not a problem. Essentially, we're a team of over 75 expert staff members and over 40 PhDs, and have a proven model of delivering impactful funding from across the federal landscape. Are we sharing the slides? Can everyone see the slides okay?
I'm getting them right now. Zev, 1 sec.
Okay. Okay. Sorry about a few technical difficulties here. But thank you guys for bearing with us. We good now?
Yes.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Okay. Sorry about that. But making our way to our team and who we are. Sam, do you mind going over to the next slide?
Yep.
So this is our team, and specifically our founder and CEO, Sam Tetlow, has a successful track record as an entrepreneur and investor in life science companies such as Amalgam Therapeutics, Epicipher, ILS Genomics, Immunologics, and TransZyme Pharma, which IPO'd in 2011. Sam continues to build on his venture capital experience by investing into compelling companies as an angel investor. Sam seeks results operationally and has translated those results into over 6 times return on invested capital, with 82% cash realization in his last 24 years of investing. Sam holds an MBA from UNC and a Bachelor's of Science in Aerospace Engineering from Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And some fun facts about Sam: he's been on Mount Everest, is a former competitive triathlete, and an avid proponent of doing good while doing well. But enough about us and our team. Let's get on to the reason we're all here. Dr. Geoff Ling. Our guest today is a true pioneer at the intersection of medicine, military, and high-stakes innovation. Dr. Geoff Ling is a retired U.S. Army colonel and a medical doctor who served for years as the military's only neurointensive care specialist, leading the way in traumatic brain injury treatment on the front lines in Iraq and Afghanistan. But his impact goes far beyond the clinic. At DARPA, he was the founding director of the Biological Technology Office, where he spearheaded moonshot projects like brain-controlled bionic arms and on-demand drug manufacturing for the battlefield. If you've seen him on 60 Minutes, you know he doesn't just predict the future of health, he builds it. In fact, he co-authored the foundational proposal that led to the creation of the new federal agency we all now know as ARPA-H, with honors ranging from the Legion of Merit to the Defense Medal for Distinguished Public Service. We are extremely honored to have Dr. Geoff Ling join us today. And with that, Sam, I'll hand it over to you and let you take it away.
Great. Thanks, Jeff. I'm sorry. Thanks, Zev. And Jeff, it's an honor to have you here. I've read your testimony, and I consider you a friend. Um, we really want to hear your leadership and pedigree track record of making these fundamental programs a reality, both on the delivery side of the on the government, but also as an entrepreneur yourself. I wanted to just take a couple of moments and set the stage about where we are, and really prime the discussion for Jeff's thought leadership. Here, we, as you know, hopefully, there are, and really get a context of ARPA and DARPA in the broad landscape of all the ARPA programs and in the context of federal funding. So in the United States government, there are 5 ARPA level programs. There are other similar programs, smaller stage in non-US countries, but this country leads the charge in advanced research programs. DARPA on the left-hand side is the original, the OG, the most iconic inventor of ARPANET, now known as Web 3.0, GPS, which we use all the time, and now more recently, quantum computing. There are 4 other ARPA programs that Grant Engine has varying levels of expertise in and focus in. ARPA-H is DARPA we're very deep in. Obviously, you've heard this as a consistent webinar theme for us, for you, our audience. ARPA-H we're very deep with. ARPA-E for energy is really doing breakthrough work for grid resilience, electric battery manufacturing. They've given away significant levels of funding in innovative levels. IARPA, the intelligence community, that budget amount is not public because it's part of the National Intelligence Program, but quite significant and advanced. And then ARPA-I under the Department of Transportation for infrastructure. One of the compelling things about these programs is that many times they do interrelate. The biotechnology office out of DARPA, which Jeff founded, is really focused on biotechnology, not only as an innovation priority, but also a national security priority for this country. So these are areas that the government has earmarked and allocated significant funding to really make the impossible probable. And these are programs that have highly qualified individuals running them as program managers, and they are designed to establish a pivotal portion of the life cycle of an organization's path from start at the very left-hand side of this slide, all the way through to the end, which is program of record. And what you see here really is that early stage where you traditionally would do an SBIR, STTR activity. DARPA is going to be in these very high risk, high reward programs. And there are follow-on programs where typically in a DARPA environment, requirements are established and made and refined, often validated. But then later, those requirements have to be reduced to practice in a defense environment. And DARPA in particular, but all the ARPA programs play a pivotal role in a early stage of taking big risks, often seen as 10 years out, and bringing them into the future, and using technological innovation and entrepreneurial and what I'd say is a true venture mindset to retire those principal risks that are the big blockers, the making the unlock happen to bring a program to a reality. It's not trying to do everything. Sometimes they go to scale, but it's really about retiring those principal risks. There are a few hallmarks of DARPA in particular, but really all the ARPA programs that we focus on. The overarching mission is to do something very hard, very difficult, many would say impossible, and architect a program and performers, you as performers, in such a way that you make that impossible mission actually probable to occur. Typically, this is beyond the time horizon when your board and venture investors would want to have risk appetite for. Typical venture fund life is 10 years. So they're thinking 3-4 years out. ARPA, DARPA thinks 10 years out. It's harder and more riskier than traditional venture funding. It is not incremental funding. There is certainly lots of programs available at the Department of Defense, at NIH, at BARDA, at NSF, and many foundations that will fund incremental progress. This is not that. This is looking to make transformative, groundbreaking leaps of innovation that are not otherwise known of how to do that. Again, it's where requirements are defined and made, and really later requirements down the road for getting to scale. So with that context, and I do also just want to say, yeah, let's put up the first poll, Dan, of just to get a context for Jeff and the audience about how familiar you are with DARPA's innovation funding process and the DOW, DOD overall. That'll just help get a sense. So we'll let that clock in. We've got 80, well, clocking in at 100 now. Participant responses. Dan will publish that in a minute. And I do also just want to put a placeholder in towards the end of the webinar. We are going to give an update on the SBIR reauthorization. There is recent news as of the last 24 hours that's quite relevant. So stay tuned for that at the end. But with no further ado, Jeff, really pleased to have you here. We've got a few key topics that we wanted to cover. I'm going to stop sharing the screen and really just engage with you about thinking in the life cycle of how performers start to socialize and have discussions with program managers before a program solicitation is announced, and the criticality of doing that early. Then once it's announced, how do you engage with program managers? And then what is required to submit a winning proposal, how negotiations go, and then importantly, post-award, that's when you're at the starting line. What happens after that, and how do you interact, the cadence? So love to get your take on the life cycle of how performers engage. And I'm going to stop sharing the screen. And yeah, Dan, let's share those poll results. And we can go. I think majority, Dan, I can't see the poll results right now. He's gonna share those. I can see the admin clock going. So we'll share the results from the first poll. But with that, Dan, excuse me, Jeff, let me hand it over to you for your thoughts on how things got created, where you see things going, and what effectiveness looks like.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot, Sam. So let me begin by making a disclaimer. So I don't work for Sam. I'm a friend of Sam's, but I'm not an advisor. I'm not getting a nickel for having a discussion with you guys right now today. I have no fiduciary responsibility or relationship with Grand Engine at all. So I'm talking to you as a former federal government employee and a former U.S. Army officer. So I'm talking to you like as an old guy, right? I'm an old guy, right? So where do we begin? And I think that we begin, since this discussion is about the ARPAs, is that we first should understand that there's a lot of money in the United States for R&D. It's actually, if you actually take a look at the most recent data, there's well over about $150 billion dumped into R&D in the US. That's an incredible number. I mean, that's more than the GDP of some countries. And we live in a remarkable place. And if you actually look at some of the internal R&D dollars, such as what exists at Pfizer and Merck and the others, and Apple and these other places, the number is even more astronomical. It's like over 300 billion. But the question is that what do we get in terms of bang for the buck? And that's really kind of where we sit. So a lot of you folks out there either are or represent remarkable talent. And that's probably the strength of the United States, in my opinion, is the brilliance that you guys represent, the geniuses that you guys are or represent. That is how the US maintains its leadership. It's your intellects, and that's what it is. So how, in fact, do you feed that wonderful pool of intellectual capability and turn it into products, things that we can use? Now, the nice thing about ARPAs, and particularly DARPA, the one that I was at for 13 years, is that we thought in terms of capabilities. So number one is it's not so much as what it is, but what can it do? So capability, it becomes the most important word that you should think of when you approach any of the ARPAs, and particularly DARPA. All right. DARPA exists to maintain technological superiority for the US military. That's it. You know, you may have a cure for cancer, and that's a wonderful thing. And God bless you if you do, because I'm a practicing physician still. I hope that you have it. But is it DARPA? No. Is it ARPA-H? Yes. So you have to think about who you're going to talk to first. Remember who is your audience. And you'd be shocked at how many people walk into a room and have no freaking clue either the agency they're at or the person they're looking for, and yet they have hanging on their hip or in their pocket a computer called their cell phone that they could Google this person while they're sitting in the freaking waiting room. I was shocked at how many people walked in and basically said, you should know me, but I don't know you. That is just stupid. Do not do that. Know who you're talking to. And if you're really lucky and you get a heads up on who else is in the room, you should know every person. Not knowing that is, I'll be blunt, is lazy. And it looks lazy to the people who are listening. So be damn sure you know who you're talking to. That's number one. This is important because the ARPAs, unlike NIH, for example, are not really interested in investigator-initiated research. They could care less. What they want to know is, can you solve my problem? And so the number one thing to know is what problem is the person sitting before you trying to solve? Now, let's stick with DARPA for now, all right? And let's, for a moment, think about what DARPA would be interested in. So a couple of things. They're going to be interested in maintaining the fighting force. Simple, straight and simple. If you're going to the Tactical Technology Office, TTO, you better have a better gun. If you're going to the STO, you better have a better system. If you're going to MTO, you better have a better microsystem. If you're going to BTO, you better have a biological solution to whatever problem it is. It might be something like biosurveillance. It might be something like a better wound healing for the injured warfighter. And it might be a better way of doing something using biology as a technology. So, for example, if you had a way of fueling a jet engine using a biological process, they would want to hear that. So BTO is just not about health. I want to be clear on that. It's about biotech, and that's why it was formed. How can we leverage biology to solve some DoD problems? Or how do we identify a biological problem that we can attack? I'll give you a very straightforward example: biofouling. So ships, of course, have a problem with biofouling, right? Can you solve that problem using whatever technology you have? So this is how you contextualize it. So when you approach DARPA, how am I helping maintain the fighting force or maintaining technological superiority? And how am I using biology to do that? And that's kind of how you should think about it when you approach DARPA. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, it is very important, as Sam pointed out, to get to the right person. Because at the end of the day, the thing that drives what goes on inside of the ARPA agencies are the program managers. They're the most important person that you're going to interact with. There's something that we call requirements. And requirements often come from, in the military, the line. The Army has a requirement. They want a bigger cannon, for example. The Air Force has a requirement. They want a faster airplane, and so on and so forth. So it's incumbent upon the research groups within the military to solve these requirements. So the Office of Naval Research, for example, is going to be focused on biofouling. That's something that the Navy is very worried about. They've generated a requirement to have a solution. This is very different than the DARPA. DARPA has no requirements. It is not requirements driven. It is idea driven. So this is great if you are a brilliant entrepreneur and you have a really cool idea. You want to go to DARPA. because it may not solve a problem that the military recognizes just yet. So when Dan Wattendorf, for example, developed a program to develop genomic vaccines back in 2013, way before COVID, his notion was that he was going to solve a problem that the military really didn't have, which is how do I rapidly develop a vaccine for an emerging infectious disease? At the time, he was worried about two things, Ebola and rabies. So Dan brilliantly developed the genomic vaccine program for the reasons that you guys already know. But he had to go to people who he thought that could solve this problem, and other people who knew that they could contribute to the solving of this problem came to him, and from that he constructed his program, just like me constructing my programs and others like me and Dan. The point is that we identify a use case first, and then we back up and say, how do we solve this problem? And we look to folks like you all to do it, because Dan's not going to solve it. I'm not going to solve it. You're going to solve it. And the way we get these programs together is that you find you have a use case. You then typically what you do is you go out into the community and you ask the brilliant people that any of us can look up who are already working on that, and you get from them what their thoughts are. And then from there, you try to have an industry day or something like it where you open up to the community, because you don't know everybody. You don't know the wonderful folks that are on this line, for example. This is an opportunity for you to come forward and say, hey, you don't know me, but I got a great idea. And then at that point is that you would then have an opportunity to talk to the PM so that you can kind of give them the elevator pitch that he would say, or she would say, oh, that's a great idea. I need to know more. And so for that, we back up and we start to put our program together. All this period of time that I'm talking about is the best opportunity you have to get to getting your idea before the program manager, the most important person. At some point, the program manager is going to say, okay, I've got enough here and enough understanding of the space that I can construct a true program. And the program will be to solve X. At that point, the program manager internally has to go and convince their office director, somebody like me, that this is a great idea, it's worthy of investment, and we can move forward. In many cases, what I would say, and folks like me would say, is that, hey, Charlie or Jane, you've got a great idea, there's a great program, but I tell you what, we should seed a couple of these brilliant people you've met just to see if they can get up some preliminary data to show that there's some legs here. So what can they do for us in 9 months? And I'll give you up to $500,000 per person to do this. These are called seedlings. And this is, in fact, what DARPA has a lot of their money invested into. Brilliant young folks like you all say, look, you got a great idea. Why don't we test it? Test run it. Don't spend a lot of money. What's that? For the U.S. government, what's $500,000? Seriously, what's $500,000? But what we're not going to give you, and this is really important, is time. You will not get time. Time is not going to be your friend. Make no mistake about it. They're going to say, I'm going to give you $500,000. You're going to go ahead and do a first series of preliminary studies to show that this is a viable concept. And, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 9 months, at most a year. I'm not going to give you more than that. There's just no way. And why is that? Because there are 3 other people who are also going to get the same kind of money, and they're going to move fast too. So you have to move fast. And that's good, because I know all you guys are geniuses and you will move fast. And at the end of that, they'll look at it and they'll say that the hope is all 4 of you succeed. I mean, that's really the hope. There's no reason why they want you to fail. Understand this. This program manager is putting their reputation on the line before the leadership, because they can be kicked out anytime. So they're saying to themselves, well, I have this great idea, and you folks out there help me solve it. And by golly, if all 4 of you fail, then that program manager is probably not going to have a job very long. They're going to go back to the university or go back to their industry, whatever. They're going to be kicked out the door. So they want you to succeed, make no mistake. So you'll come up, you'll get some money, you'll show it works, and then they'll go and they'll say, look, I've got this amount of money. I only spent a lousy $2 million, and I've got all this data now, and I show that it's viable. I need to construct a real program. I need $75 million. And that's kind of the numbers that DARPA uses, right? 50, 75, 100 million. That's good. Then after that, this is important. When they start putting that program together and they start pitching it out, they're going to ask for proposals. Once those proposals are coming in, they cannot by law talk to you. They cannot, they're gagged. So they go into what they call source selection. At that point, whatever you gave them is what they're going to read. So it's really important, therefore, in the early stages, Sam had pointed out to you, that you engage as many times as you can, because you want to be sure that the proposal you submit is meeting exactly what this PM wants. Because if you do not, you're not going to get funded. And you cannot then go back later and go, oh, I thought of this. It's too late. Once the door gets shut, it's shut. And so, and then what will happen is when it's over, the only people who decide you like this is the DARPA program manager and whoever he's having or she's having review it. And typically there are other government reviewers from other agencies. So NIH government reviewers. And you say, well, what about the peer reviews? No, we're not going to have a competitor review your proposal. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
What's going to happen is you're going to have a government person who has no dog in the fight, who was our expert. So I used to have FDA investigators. I had NSF, I had NIST, I had military, of course, and I had NIHers come by and serve on this. They're government employees. They're bound by government ethics and the usual, and they're who's reviewing you. And then at the end of that, it's either yes or no. We're going to fund you. We're not going to fund you.
Yeah. Jeff, so much knowledge here. And there's questions coming in the comments. One of them that is, I think, really pivotal is how would you suggest early engaging with a PM to see if that company's asset or product portfolio could be relevant? And I think if you can answer, great. I can also answer the corollary, which is DARPA Connect. If you don't want to take that one, I can take that one. But yeah, how would you were a PM, you ran BTO, you created it. How do people get in and have that conversation with PMs?
You got to meet the person. So DARPA programmers spend a third of their time traveling. They go into meetings because they have to know, right? And like I said, is they don't want to fail either. They're kind of like you guys, right? They don't want to fail. DARPA program manager lasts maybe 3, maybe 4 years in their job. So in that amount of time, they have got to either achieve something or not. So they too are in the same boat you're in many ways. If they don't show that they can come up with a program for the first year or two, they're gone. If they do show they can have a good program, they're there for 4 years maybe. If they have a great program, they're there for longer. So the goal is to have a great program. So let's come back to meeting the PM. So the PM is motivated to meet you. Make no mistake about that. They're motivated to meet you. So they go to meetings. They go to the meetings that you would expect them to go to. So for example, in the world of biology, do they go to the FASEB? Yes, of course they go to FASEB. Do they go to the American College of Physicians meetings for cardiology? Sometimes they do. Do they go to the military meetings? Doggone right they do. They go to MHS, for example, military health systems things. Absolutely they'll be there. They're military, for goodness sakes. So think about where you would go if you were this person, and you should go to those meetings and find this person. That's one way to do it. The second way to do it is get in to see them. Get in to see them. If Sam knows the PM and can get you an audience before the PM, take it. Absolutely take it. There's nothing like face-to-face and elbow bumping. We all know that. Zoom is great, but you want to be in the room with this person. So you want to get in to see them. Make an appointment to see them. They are government employees. They are bound to answer their emails. They may not personally answer them, but maybe they have one of their assistants answer it, but they're bound to do this. And of course, there's DARPA Connect. DARPA Connect was another avenue for getting before them. It was the video is meant to start the ball rolling. But without a doubt, you've got to get before them. And there's many different ways. How do you get a first date anyway, right? I mean, think about it. You either meet them at a bar, you meet them at church, or you get your mother to introduce you. Sam is your mom. Sam will introduce you, right? These are the ways you get in, but it's no different than that, honestly. You've got to meet that person and get your idea before them. DARPA Connect was another way of doing this. And I thought that was really a cool idea when Stephanie Tompkins' team put that concept together. So go ahead, Sam, you describe it.
Yeah, no, I think we had Jennifer Thabit on a July 10th webinar last July. She now runs DARPA Connect. And that is absolutely, there are multiple entry points into DARPA underneath DARPA Connect, the ARIS portal, contacting Jennifer Thabit. But I would first point you to one excellent resource. This is installment number 3 of our Defense Leadership series. And the first installment was Zev actually walked us through on the audience an access point of the webinar entitled The Power of Access. And we got quite detailed around here's what your email can look like. Here's your cadence of email versus calling. Here's how you network in on LinkedIn. So I'd really encourage you to reference that thought leadership piece. Or I appreciate the kind words, Jeff. I reach out to us. I think do your own homework. I mean, Jeff said a pearl of wisdom there when he said, you know, you can Google the program manager, you can look at their backgrounds, you can find them on LinkedIn. There's sure to be some 1 or 2 degrees of separation away between you and that person. It ends up being a really small world. So those are fundamental ways. If you to access that webinar, we got that question. If you go to the same link as you registered for this webinar, you will see a hyperlink to download those resources. And they're also at Grand Engine's events page on our homepage. So you can just scroll through the events, but that's the same landing page will give you installment number 4 coming up, but also the previous recordings and presentations. So there's a lot of good, and we've got deep connections in these places as well. So feel free to reach out to us as well. We typically don't charge for that as just part of our relationship building and pro bono to those PMs. Leverage those resources that you already have been given. And then when you run into brick walls, call us or call us prior.
There's one other thing too, Sam, I point out for DARPA, and this is only DARPA, and that is the military matters. So if a general officer, senior colonel, command sergeant major, CMC feels that there's something that they need, they will call DARPA. DARPA will answer them. That is their constituent. They serve these people. So make no mistake, if you are doing something and you're able to get to, let's for argument's sake say somebody down in 3rd Infantry, and you have this great thing that's going to help their medics or whatever, and their medics really love it, they would typically go up the chain of the military's medical research, which is MRDC, which is Fort Detrick, but they can also call DARPA. And DARPA will answer the phone. Make no mistake about it, that if the senior sergeant, a medic of a line unit had a problem and they wanted to talk to a DARPA PM, I will promise you that DARPA PM will call and talk to that person. So if you can get to the military guys, they can also be your intro into DARPA.
Yeah. So one just quick, we'll use this as a case study. One of the questions, Jeff, that came up was, that's great expertise that you just shared, Jeff. One question, and use this as a case study, was asked, would DARPA be interested in genomic stability for the warfighter, really call it biotherapeutics, preventatives, prophylactics, and rapid multiplicative, multi-omic battlefield diagnostics with obvious dual use applications. And what you go, Jeff, on that's a specific question, and all of the audience questions will be specific because they all have their unique product profiles. But let's answer that one.
So let's put it in the context of your audience again, right? So now you're talking DoD, you're not talking to ARPA-H. So you can actually have this conversation with the ARPA-H folks in the context of probably where you want to be. But let's pretend that you think that you have a clear, for example, you say genomic stability, all right? So where could that be very useful, right? And uniquely military? Well, certainly in a dirty environment. Say that there was Iran got annoyed enough that they decided to dig their uranium out of the rubble of the mountain and turn it into a weapon. And then they fired it off. Trust me, this is a nightmare for the DoD, right? So if in fact they did that, then what would be the consequences therein? And how would you mitigate those consequences? In that way, you could say, if I could somehow find a way to do some genomic stabilization, provide some resilience, provide a prophylaxis then all good. So the military is big on prophylaxis, make no mistake about it. I mean, yes, everybody still has to get their vaccines. That's prophylaxis, right? If you can put it in a narrative that goes like that, that may actually pique the interests of the DARPA PM that you're talking about, because this is about maintaining the fighting force. You would envision that in a dirty environment, they're going to send the military in that dirty environment to do their job. And so this is a way of helping preserve the fighting force. And that's the way I would think about it. Diagnostics is always useful, right? And so you always want to treat before they're sick. That's the best of the best, right? I mean, if I knew that my soldier was harboring, let's say, a viral illness, and I could diagnose it before it became symptomatic and before they became viremic and before they became infectious to other members of their unit, but I could treat them early and mitigate that, that'd be way awesome. I mean, that way it fits right into the notion of maintaining the fighting force. And by the way, that was one of my programs, predicting health and disease. So we won't go over that, but that was the whole idea: is can you diagnose somebody pre-symptomatically
Yeah,
and get the benefit? So, but
yeah,
remember what we're saying is that we're doing it to maintain the fighting force. Now, what Sam said is very important: is that there's dual use in the civilian sector. That's awesome. I mean, make no mistake that you don't want to be selling only to the U.S. military. You want your product to go out and save the world, but also the military encourages this. I will just point this out to you. They want you to go out and sell not tens of units to them, but rather millions of units to the consumer industry so that the price drops and then they get it for free. And then, of course, on and on it goes. You get that notion. So a lot of the things that the military recognizes, they've been around for a long time. They've been around as long as this country's been around. So they have seen it all, done it all. Truthfully, they have. So they get it. They totally get it. But you still have to answer the mail. When you go to ARPA-H, it's a little different. It's a different constituents that they serve, and your narrative may be a little bit different. But again, it's all about health. And for them, global health, pediatric health, this sort of stuff is all good. It's something that will fall on deaf ears to the military, right? And again, there's another thing too. Veterans is very important, but veterans is a VA problem, not a DoD problem, a DoW problem. Understand that.
yeah, yeah. Interesting. So, Jeff, can you talk about in approaching a program manager for anyone's specific program via a white paper using the Heilmeier Catechism, and just what that is, how it's deployed, how long should those be? Do you need help to make those happen? Yeah, thanks.
The most important thing when you approach a DARPA PM, and I would argue any of the ARPA PMs, as well as what should lead on your white paper, is the bluff. Your bluff should be right there. Sorry. Bluff is bottom line up front. When you brief senior military officers, like generals, they don't have time. You got to capture them within the first 10 seconds you're out the door. So bluff is bottom line up front. Give you an example. I have a cure for cancer. That'll stop people in their tracks. Another one is I can prevent radiation injury in a dirty environment. That'll stop them in their tracks. Bottom line up front. And you have to be bold. Do you have a cure for this? I have a cure for that. Not that I think I can reduce the risk of. Nobody wants to hear that. They want to hear, I can cure it. So bottom line up front, that first sentence is really super important. And it should be on your briefings to ARPAs. It should be on your memos to ARPAs, and most definitely to your elevator pitch to ARPAs. That's number one. Then, because you want the question of, oh, cool. Well, how are you going to do it? That's when the Heilmeier Catechism comes in. You guys can look it up. It's really great. It's the first question always is, and this came from George Heilmeier, who was one of the early DARPA directors, and it's become the commandments of DARPA. First thing is, what are you trying to do, and describe it not using no jargon. That's really important. That's the way it's worded. So you look and you say, okay, I'm going to cure cancer. All right. Great. That's your bluff. The second thing is, how are you going to do it? How is it different from how other people are doing it? The rest of the world has a lot of smart people in it. They must have tried to do this, but they failed. So how are you different? That's really important. And then it goes down the list of other things that you would anticipate. What are your milestones of success so that I know that you're failing or succeeding? In DARPA, there's an old saying, fail early, fail fast. And that means that if you have a very aggressive and you're doing something very challenging, but it is high risk means that there's a high risk that it would fail as well as succeed. But fail early, fail fast, right? Don't keep beating this, pumping money into a deep hole. And then finally is that for you guys is how much is it going to cost? And this is super important. ARPAs are very interesting. They're not like the other funding agencies that have a budget. Typically, an ARPA program starts with a notional budget, but it may blossom, bloom. So, for example, my prosthetics program, my bionic arm program, Sam coined it, this whole idea of having a brain-controlled prosthetic arm, that started as a $40 million program. But it ended up being over $100 million program. Because notionally, you start by thinking what it is, and then once you get into it, you realize it's going to cost more. And this is what's cool about ARPA, by the way, if I can just digress for a minute. ARPA wants you to succeed. So pretend that you had a really great project. You said, I need $1 million. All right, they got $1 million. And then all of a sudden you found out that, oh, shoot, I could go faster, or I could get this barrier to overcome with another $1 million. And you're afraid to ask the DARPA PM. Do not do that. Ask the DARPA PM for it. They want you to succeed. Why would they not? And for a lousy $2 million, you came up with a cure for cancer? A lousy $200 million, you came up with a cure for cancer? Who would deprive you of that in their right minds? So that's the beauty of an ARPA. An ARPA says, if you're succeeding, if you have this very challenging problem, and then the Heilmeier Catechism says, how are you going to do it? What are your milestones? And you're achieving the milestones. I, as a DARPA programmer, would pump more money into you. I would give you more money. I've done that I did that many times in my career at DARPA. I gave the performer more money. Why? Because I wanted them to go faster. I wanted them to achieve more. I wanted them to achieve the higher things. And dramatic, wonderful things happen when you do that. So the cool thing is, when you ask for the money, which is the last part of the Heilmeier Catechism, ask for what you need. Ask for what you need, right? If you need $10 million, say I need $10 million, but you better damn well justify it, because what they're going to do during contract negotiations, they're going to pick over every daggone line, and they're going to cut you if they think that you're trying to screw them, or they'll just eliminate you if you think they're trying to screw them. So be honest, but ask for what you need. If you need 10 million, say I need 10 million. If you need only one, ask for only one. But the point is do not under-resource yourself. One of the things I told all of my DARPA PMs was make sure you do not under-resource the brilliant people you have in your program, because that will damn them to failure. We all know this. Make sure they're adequately resourced. What you don't do is you don't give them time. So whatever you do is as you construct your programs, then one of the questions is, how long is it going to take? And so you should have yourself saying, it will take 3 years or 4 years or whatever, but clearly say at 18 months, I will achieve this. At 2 years, I will achieve this, and so on and so forth. So that's a lot to put in there, Sam, but I wanted to.
No, it's excellent. It's excellent, Jeff. I think one of the questions came up of like, well, is curing cancer a bit of a, I can cure cancer. Is that, does the BS meter go off? And I really want to come back to what Jeff is really saying here, which is these are moonshots. This is not an incremental improvement. And so the bluff point that Jeff is making is that it is getting that program manager to snap to attention and want to read that white paper or your proposal. That bluff is the entry point. It is the curb appeal on your document that then has that program manager actually pay attention to what you're doing. And the there needs to be there. And these programs are moonshots. They're more impossible than they are possible. And that's what this is about. That's what these programs are designed to do and how they are structured. That's why program managers execute. So it is that level of attention that you need to garner. But moreover, it's what happens after they start reading that is where the value really needs to show and shine through. And the Heilmeier Catechism is a very salient, very effective way to frame up your thinking in a practical outcomes in the context of doing something that is indeed, a moonshot. So I think that's Greg, your question's a good one, but that's the whole point, right? We're here to do something that is incredibly difficult. So
Can I give you an example, Sam?
Please,
That might be
please.
illustrative. So one of my programs was I came back from Afghanistan on our first tour of duty. One of the things I started noticing that was happening is that there were a lot of our servicemen were losing limbs. So the goal was to create a new prosthetic limb. Okay, we want to be a real prosthetic limb, 5 fingers, working elbow, working shoulder, all that kind of good stuff. But the magic is that how do you do that, right? And so the concept is that when you ask the young injured person, the patient, what do you want? Not what is probable, not as what I think I can create, but what do you want? And of course, the university said, I want an arm like Luke Skywalker's got. I want a robot arm that looks like an arm, feels like an arm. Nobody can tell that I have an arm, and it's controlled by my brain so that I can do this and I can do that and I can do all this, right? Not, right? I can do it all. That's what they want. So then that became the genesis of the program. It is changing what you guys are developing into what does the user really want? What is their desire? That's a moonshot. A moonshot. My mom worked on the moonshot. My mom was an aerospace engineer in 1961, Chinese woman, I might add, and worked in the U.S. space program. And what the trick wasn't, can we go to the moon? The trick was, can we go to the moon and bring the guys back alive? That was the trick. All right. And so it's very similar here. What does the end user want? So in my case, it was a robot arm controlled by the brain. So then what you do is, in the Heilmeier Catechism, is how do you create a program that makes sense to, what are they talking about? So you realize there's only 2 parts to this. One is the engineering part, which is building this cool, wifty arm. And then the second part is neuroscience, is how do you tap into the brain to give you the brain signals to go and run this arm? So now all of a sudden, when you pitch the program, you say, no, sir, it's really hard, but think about it. It's a bounded problem. I need great neuroscientists to solve my brain issue part, and I need great engineers to build the arm part, and I'm going to need to link them together. But I don't need brilliant chemists. I don't need brilliant physicists. I don't need a social scientist. What I need is neuroscientists and mechanical engineers. That's all I need, and I can do this. And then you go through the program. The program went beautifully. If you look at 60 Minutes, we succeeded. I said I could do it in 4 years. This is important because when I put together all this community of these brilliant science and mechanical engineers and neuroscientists, said, yeah, we're going to do this. And they all go, yeah, we can do it. I want you to do it 4 years. And the room got quiet. Stone cold quiet. You can drop a pin. But there's always a couple of people go, stand up and go, yeah, I can do it. Bet on me. Put me in, coach. Put me in, coach. That's who you want. And you go, okay. You have, everyone else go, you're crazy or nuts. But there's always somebody who gets up there and goes, me. Put me in, coach. And that person, then you start to go, okay, how would you do it? And you go through this iteration. You want to be that person who says, put me in, coach.
Yeah, amen. So let's maybe put a bookend on this part of the process. And I think I'll just say, if you applied and did not get an award, or you want to get into a PM for your specific proposal or product of interest, that white paper via the Heilmeier Catechism is a great vector. And in particular, integrating the feedback. If you didn't get a full proposal, you got feedback. So integrating that, and give us a call. We're happy to consult and advise on how to position, whether it's still at DARPA or the other ARPA programs or somewhere else. I think that white paper can be a good mechanism, whatever your tech is, to access the program managers. Jeff, let's pivot to DARPA funding, post DARPA funding. So what happens after DARPA stage, and are programs that follow on funding is meant for a dovetail? What programs are dovetailing right after the DARPA phase And are those BAAs? Are those programs of record? How do you get from in the middle or towards the end of a DARPA program to the program of record, Holy Land?
No, this is really important. Sam is right. So the ARPA funding is short-term funding, 3-4 years. And the whole notion of it is to de-risk and so on and so forth. So then what do you do at the end of the 4 years, right? So you should work your butt off while you have those first years of funding. Lucky you, you got ARPA funding. You should work your butt off because the whole notion is that you should be de-risked enough that somebody else who has a lower risk tolerance than the ARPAs are willing now to invest in you. That's it. So in the military, let's talk about the military for a second, then we'll talk about the civilians second. In the military, what you want to do is what we call transition to the big Army, big Navy, big Air Force, whatever, because they have additional funding. Now, the government, Congress, when it budgets money for R&D, they actually bin it. It's called $6.1 to $6.6. $6.1 are meant to be for very early stage, high risk, notional things. 6.2, 6.3 is kind of like what you would call preclinical in the medical world. And 6.4 and beyond is more advanced development. You cannot, by law, use $6.4 for 6.2 work. They just can't. So DARPA is given a lot of $6.2 to $6.4, but they don't have 6.5, 6.6. So even if they wanted to keep you going, they don't have the money. The color of the money is not right for them. By law, they can't do it. So they have to transition you to the big Army, big Navy, big Air Force. So this is fine because built in the Department of Defense, Department of War, is this way of doing a handoff. So while you're doing your project and you're getting great results, your program manager should be helping you get to the second or transition dollars. Actually, the PMs are expected to find a transition partner, we call it. They don't just throw you out in the wolves. So if lucky you, the Department of Defense, say the Army, for example, you had a great wound care thing, and it showed really great problems. The DARPA program is now in its 4th year. You've succeeded. You've hit all the milestones. By that point, the DARPA program manager and you should already be talking to the transition partner, which in this case would be, for example, MRDC up at Fort Detrick, or the Office of Naval Research, ONR, if it was for the Marines, let's say, Office of Naval Research. And then what happens is your funding would transition to advanced development. So it's no longer just speculative research. Right now, it's going to advanced development with the goal of the Department of War, Department of Defense, of buying your product when it meets the highest transition readiness level, TRL. That's the goal. The goal is the military wants to buy your product. So they're the customer as well, the early funder. So going down the path of DOD, DOW is wonderful that way. But that transition of where the extra dollars is, you don't have to go through BAA. You don't have to go through all that other stuff. If they're transitioning into MRDC, often they already have an existing program that they'll absorb you into. And that's really the ultimate of the ultimates. There's something called program of record, that if what you have really, really, really is mission critical, and they believe that it's going to be mission critical for, let's say, the next 30 years, such as the F-15 jet, and I'm not joking, that was a good one. The F-15 jet was being designed in the 1960s, just so you know. And of course, the F-15 Alpha-A looks anything like the F-15 Foxtrot F version that it is now. But what happened is that early phase funding transitioned to the Air Force. They created what they call a program of record, and they're actually able to put it into the Department of Defense, Department of War's budget, the NDAA, the National Defense Authorization Acts, each year. So there's money for it. And that program ensured additional research, additional acquisition, and on it goes. And you get the point. So the goal ultimately is to get to be a program record in the military. Now, what about ARPA-E? So I have never worked at ARPA-E. I'm going to call that out right now. I had never. Did I help start it? Heck yeah, I did. I mean, so back in 2017, I and some friends, Bob Wright and Mike Stebbins, we conceived this notion of having this new agency. We, if you want to look, it's on Fox Business News back in 2017. We pitched the idea because we knew that President first time Trump watches that, and we were trying to get it before him. And we went up the path and ultimately ended up having to go through the Biden administration because the Bidens, of course, won in 2020, and you get the point. That was meant actually to help with just what Sam is talking about. And the idea was, and you can hear my congressional testimony, is that NIH does a lot of the 6-1 or early research and then leverage that to become something that's clinically relevant, right? And that was the whole point. And that's in fact what I believe that the folks there are trying to do. And if they can succeed, then their transition, in fact, that program manager should be talking to FDA, saying, how do I get this through FDA? Govy to Govy is much more efficient than civilian to Govy. You want your program manager at ARPA to be talking to the FDA because they can talk Govy to Govy. Govy always answers each other's phone calls and say, hey, look, I got this cool thing. You're going to need to help me. I did this. I called the FDA all the time. We negotiated. So look, I got the money. I've got the money. Tell me what you're going to ask them to do so I can fund them to succeed and get through the FDA. That's what ARPA-H would do, right? So that's why these engagements are important. FDA is not going to give you money to go through that process, but ARPA-H would, DARPA would, and so on and so forth. That's how you leverage these relationships. So use your government relationships. Look, let's be clear here. If you have a product that was developed with non-dilutive capital by ARPA, whatever, and then ultimately you were then able to get through FDA funded by ARPA, whatever, tell me that you don't have value. If you can't raise decent money on a great valuation at that point, then Sam needs to take you out back and spank you. Because really, the whole point is that that is what the goal of these ARPAs are, is to mature your technology enough that it's de-risked enough that the outside community will then pick up the ball and run with it. But more to you is that your valuation should be quite favorable so that you don't have to give up your entire company to some VC just to get your stuff through. By this time, I mean, you should be so mature that you're in a very nice spot. You still have your company. You're still doing the great things you want to do, and you have the adequate capital now to become commercial. The government's not going to help you get commercial. The government's going to de-risk it enough so that you are at the stage that we just talked about.
Yeah, excellent. So we're really close to time, Jeff, but one other last thing. We've got a couple of slides we'll do after we answer this last question, but the questions have been coming through. Is my company of 2 people too small? What's the right size of a company to do it? And is it more about the track record capability of the key people proposing the work and partnering with consortium players to fill the gaps that are fundamentally needed to retire the risk? That is the core axis of success, as opposed to you've already raised $50 million, you're a 100-person company. Yeah. What is the single key ingredient to knowing you can be a success at DARPA, ARPA programs?
There's an old saying, you invest in the person, not the thing. And that holds true here. If you're a company of one, back at DARPA wants to hear from you if you have a great idea. They love it when you come in that you have a notional idea, maybe have some just basic preliminary data that you constructed by yourself, and you're a person of one. That's fine. Later on, though, as they construct the program, they're going to want to know who your partners are, right? I mean, because obviously nobody lives on an island. And then what Sam just said is absolutely appropriate. That you would then say, I am a person of one. I'm now starting my company, but I have a couple of friends. We'll call this a consortium now, and that's how come we can go after the money. But they're going to look straight in your eye and say, are you the person who I said was, put me in, coach? And then the coach will put you in if they believe you can succeed, correct? And that's the place you want to be. But, to me, you're never too small, but you can be too big. That is true. You can be too big.
Yeah. Excellent. Yeah, it's the jockey, not the horse. Excellent point. You have lived this on successfully, Jeff, on both sides. So we're at time. I think what we've seen here is thought leadership of the highest order. Jeff, thanks to you, not only what you've done in your career in the past, but what you're doing right now at your firm at Aquala. It's a company to watch, and you also have, from a citizen of this country and a patriot, as the awards say, a hero, also have thoughts around how to make a sovereign wealth fund work in this country and other really lofty aspirations to create America as the city on the hill. So I think you are a testament to this country and what can happen when you do your homework and do it really well. So I think you're an inspiration to all of us. Jeff, I want to we'll thank you formally here in a moment, but we had promised a quick SBIR update. The short story is it is not reauthorized, okay, today. And there is changing status between Ed Markey, Democrat, Massachusetts, and Joni Ernst, Republican in Iowa, at least every week. And there's been some good news in the last 24 hours and on LinkedIn to allay, I think, a Reality Bites kind of situation last Tuesday. And I'll say one thing that is absolutely true and will be true when the program gets reauthorized and will be true until such time as it gets reauthorized, which is there is a lot of other money out there, and getting non-dilutive funding is a lot. You can use the analogy of like investing for your financial future. Like personally, like you wouldn't want to invest in one stock. You wouldn't want to just invest in real estate companies in Florida. Okay. Just like that, I think the SBR program is a tremendous program. We are the leader in terms of volume and win rate at Grand Engine there. And we will continue to be the leader when it gets turned back on. But I think my point is there are foundations. There are other programs at the NIH. There are a lot of programs around the DoD that fund life sciences, the CDMRP program. 1.2 billion in 24, 57% drop in 25. Guess where it is in 20 right now in 26? 1.3 billion. It's back. You have to play that game smartly and play it well. There are lots of BAAs for life sciences. The defense arena has opened up. They've gotten a mandate from the White House to make more programs more available, faster, easier to contract. You've seen that with AFRL. Vulcan is a place. You've seen that with the Links program recently getting announced. It is a nimble dynamic. And so don't expect what worked yesterday to work today and tomorrow, but do expect there's going to be money there. And if it's not obvious where to go, call us. I think things are going to happen sooner rather than later on the SBIR program, but I've been saying that for 4 months. So, it's like Yogi Berra said, saying what's going to happen is hard, especially about the future. And so we'll do a final poll right now. Dan, if you could publish that. And let me turn it over. Jeff, I don't know if you had any last words you wanted to mention. Leave it to you, and then back over to you, Zev.
No, I just say thank you guys, and God bless you for what you do. I mean, I believe that the future is bright, and it's largely because of folks like you trying to solve the problems that have yet to been solved. So drive on, guys. Just drive on.
Yeah.
Jeff, thank you so much. Really, the insights you provided and the pathway illuminating what is sometimes a bit of an opaque place. I think it helps us. I'm sure it helps everyone here, and it just creates more access to innovation. So yeah, no, we cannot thank you enough. And I just wanted to make one small comment. I left a number in the chat for Senator Markey. For anyone who is interested in calling his office and letting him know, standing up for small businesses and letting him know that the importance of the SBIR program, we'd really appreciate you making that call. And just know that as Sam said, without the SBIR program, the DoD, the NIH, they're getting creative, and there's lots of opportunities out there for new pathways that typically might have been reserved for other organizations, other entities, other entity types. They're now setting up small business set-asides and really focused on contracting with small businesses who are at the cutting edge of innovation. So just want to put that out there. And most importantly, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to thank you all for lasting beyond the hour and for being a part of this amazing conversation. And again, Jeff, thank you so much. Sam, thank you for your insights. And if anyone needs to reach out to us, please reach out to us at funding@grantengine.com. And we'll definitely be in contact soon, and looking forward to hearing from all of you.
Thanks again.
Thanks, everyone.